now. Did it show up that I was recording? Okay, so we cut out and didn't get the first part of the recording. So those of you who are watching online didn't hear Latara, Tony, Lindsay, or myself introduce ourselves. So sorry about that. But now I've started it. So all right, so we've got Jeff or Kat left to introduce themselves. Thank you, Lindsay.
I can go ahead and go. So my full name is Katerina Solomon, but I go by Kat because sometimes it could be a mouthful, no matter where you're at or introducing yourself. My current role is semi-retired. I took the deferred resignation for the government because I've got sick of all the conflict going on within the Department of Defense. And after 20 some odd years as a government employee and being in the military, I thought it was time for a change. So I'm currently a stay-at-home dog aunt. Um, she's not as involved as a 2-year-old, but I swear the bully breed are little human toddlers. So it's definitely been a adventure. I haven't had a big dog before, so she's taught me a lot of things. So I'm taking this class because it's part of the curriculum for HR and organizational communication certificate. I say the one conflict skill I wish I had would just to be, I think a variation of what everybody else is saying is just patience. Take time, stop and smell the flowers, let everyone express their opinion before trying to solve the problem, and just sit back and listen to everybody. I think the one word, how I usually feel in conflict is overwhelmed because in my past jobs, being a senior HR person in the military, I swear everyone comes to HR for their problems. So you get used to problem solving, and I really just feel overwhelmed because I can't solve everybody's problems.
It makes sense. Well, transitioning from full-time military work to school and being a dog mom, that's enough of a something to keep your attention right now. So, all right, Jeff, I think it's you.
Awesome. Yeah, so I'm Jeff. I do work for UA Little Rock. I'm the undergraduate admissions recruiter for Central Arkansas. A mouthful, but basically I go and travel to high schools and get students to want to come to UA Little Rock. And basically I travel out to all the counties that surround Pulaski, but I don't recruit out in Little Rock at all. Um, but yeah, so that's what I do for work. But I'm also studying, so I'm doing my certificate for conflict management here. I'm doing the certificate for nonprofit management, and then my master's in public administration. It's a lot, but I'm graduating spring 2026. So
Ooh,
I'm pretty excited for that. But yeah. For conflict skills, I would definitely say the balcony view. So stepping back and kind of really visualizing and seeing the details of the conversation instead of, because I very much narrow in into my own feelings and where I'm in the moment. So being able to kind of like take that pause or step back and just like see everything as a whole, is something I definitely want to improve on. A word to describe, I would say anxious in two different ways. Anxious to get away from it, but also anxious to say what I want to say um, off the top of my head. So, but yeah, that's me.
well, thank you all for introducing yourself. And again, I'm sorry to the online people for not getting all of the introductions in here, but we're going to have a chance for you to get to know each other because of some things that I've built into the class. So I think, all of us can improve, right? We all have our own tool sets. We already have experiences that we're bringing with us. And yet there are still things that we can be working on. So I'm going to open up and just kind of introduce the class. I'm not just going to go line by line through the syllabus. I ask you all, I think I sent a couple of emails out, one on Saturday and then one yesterday, to have you be looking at the syllabus. So I'll see if there's any questions on it, but I'll hit some highlights here. Let me share my screen and I'm going to go directly to the Blackboard shell here. And I have a question as I go here. why do you think I picked this banner picture for this class?
Is that a house of cards tumbling down by any chance?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's a good one because conflicts are usually like a house of cards. Once you break the right card, the whole thing falls down, and hopefully you can get a resolution.
Yeah, and it's can get messy. And sometimes they don't fall in the same way that we would like for them to fall. Some of them are upside down and some of them are face up, and we have to kind of pick up the pieces. So I was trying to figure out a picture that would kind of represent the messiness of conflict. When we think about conflict, and I really like the Yuri's approach to this, and we'll talk a little bit about this tonight, but is that conflict may never, in some situations, conflict may never be resolved. I remember when I first started teaching about conflict, the concept of conflict resolution versus conflict management came up, and there were folks that in a department where I was teaching at the time, I was living up in Iowa, said we cannot call it a conflict resolution class because not all conflicts get resolved, but we could call it a conflict management class because we were dealing with the intrapersonal conflict, things that are going on inside of ourselves, as well as the repercussions of the interpersonal and community conflicts that we might be a part of. So we're managing conflict, we're working with it, and it's something that is ongoing, and something that we learn about. So I wanted to, as opposed to people just like, why did she put those cards up there? That an intentional thought. So I did create a video where you guys can kind of see things, and there's more in here than when I had the video originally. But we're going to just go into the syllabus that's linked in here. So it's the syllabus and the course schedule. And so when you go into that and take a look at it, and let me just zoom in a little bit here. So the course description, it just kind of sets, goes, and you can read that on your own. But these are the 5 things that I really want to happen by the time it's finished, that you would feel more confident in doing these things. And so you'll notice that there are, action verbs here. So the apply, design and implement, collaborate, reflect, strengthen, critically evaluate. Those are all specific things that I'm hoping you will take out of the course. So applying communication theories to real world context, designing and implementing strategies for conflict prevention, management, and intervention, collaborating across multiple perspectives, and we'll specifically look at something called trauma-informed lenses, which some of you, if you've done any social work or had any social work kind of classes, will recognize that term. Reflecting on your own tendencies so that you can strengthen your identity as a conflict resilient communicator. And that resilience is really your willingness to lean into conflict, to actually say, I can do this. It's like building a muscle. It's muscle building. And then critically evaluating the role of AI. Now, I struggle with this last one, and we just left a retreat on Monday with and you'll see this throughout kind of the assignments. I left a retreat on Monday that I was leading with my faculty, and I will say that, and the retreat was focused on how should we use AI in our teaching. Artificial intelligence, the generative AI, the chat GPT, those kinds of things. And I was an outlier. I actually think that we need to teach AI literacy in our classes, as opposed to just saying, no way, no, nothing, you can never use this. But I recognize that as I do that, there are some real strong ethical issues against the use of AI, both in terms of environment aspects of it, and the amount of water and electricity that it takes up, but there's also just some philosophical issues with, are we basically allowing the computer to think for us and replace us? So as we go through, you'll see that my kind of struggle with this as I was trying to put in the assignments, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we go through. But I think AI has the potential for actually helping us increase our ability to be better conflict managers. And so I wanted to talk and to bring it in some, although it may be that this is the only class in your program that actually does that. I don't know if in HR and org area that they do that, and I doubt that other masters, I don't know in the MPA program. Jeff, I know that Derek Slagle and I had a conversation recently about using Intellectus for, and he said he talks about how to use that for doing research. And so I know that you all already have been having those discussions, but I don't know that we really have had much discussions on them. So as I was thinking about those goals and what is it that would best meet the goals, I didn't want to veer too far away from what Dr. Oliver Blackburn had already done for the class. And so I went ahead and chose the book that she had has used in the past. So can you guys see this? Okay. There are two versions of this that I'm allowing you to use. This is the newer version, the 2025 version. There is, and it's the 11th edition. And the difference is the additional author here. The chapters actually, there's a few chapters, a couple of chapters that are in the old edition, the 10th edition, that aren't in here, and vice versa. But it's so expensive that I sometimes think, just go get the used one of the 10th edition, and I'm fine with that. So if you can find it cheaper, 10th edition, I'm totally fine with that. Joyce Hawker, who actually used to teach at the University of Arkansas at Fayetteville, she's retired now, is the author on both of them. She brought on Keith Berry for this new edition. It used to be Hawker and Wilmot, I think that was her partner actually, that would write with her. So I don't care which edition you have, but you will need to look at that. Now I will tell you, as I was reading the first chapter, it is so dense, and especially the first chapter in particular. The second chapter is not as bad, but the first chapter, I felt like that they put so much stuff in it that it's like you lose. It's like all I'm seeing are trees. I can't even see. I can't see the forest for the trees. It's like it's just all in there. And so, as you're reading, remember, you're not trying to memorize. You're not trying to think about how it is that you're going to have to be using all these concepts. So here's how I would read the either the Berry and Hawker 11th edition or the Hawker and Wilmot 10th edition. Is I would go initially to the beginning of each chapter. I would read the very first page, and then I would read the summary. Okay. And I know we don't often talk about this in our grad classes, but this is just to get through the density of the material. Okay. And so the chapters are typically about 30 pages long. I would read the summary. Then I would look at the key terms that are at the end of each chapter. And I would pick out maybe 3 or 4 or 5 that I'm interested in. And I would go find them and I would read about those. Now you can, if you want to be an overachiever student, you can read it from page 1 to page 35, and I'm totally fine with that. I'm just saying that I got bogged down as the instructor with this book. Okay. On the other hand, this one, so easy to read that it's like probably going to be my favorite book of the two. And this is not this possible book that several of you referenced as you were talking about skills that you would like to be developing in the balcony view. I had read and used in other classes William Urey's books like Getting to Yes and some of the negotiation. I don't know if you guys use that in the negotiation class or not, but it's a very common negotiation textbook. And William Urey has had all these international experiences. And so I thought, here we've got the Berry and Hawker book that's really focused on interpersonal relationships. Okay, so one-to-one thing. And then you've got the Urey book that's really focused on more of international, community, global conflicts so that you get kind of a bigger picture of conflict. So that's why I picked those two texts. There are times in which I also provide additional readings for you, but for the first few weeks, it's going to be from those two texts. So just so you know that, just a little bit. All right, I'm going to go through assignments for this coming week, and then I'm gonna stop and see if you've got questions about the syllabus or about the class in general, because I figured the syllabus kind of talks to you, and you might or might not have questions. So let me share my screen again. So the way that I am kind of checking in on you to see if you're applying it to your own life each week, the things that you're reading, are these weekly discussion posts. Now, I also have for the online campus students who don't attend Thursday night, and any time that you might not be able to attend Thursday night, you would also be, I would ask you to do a journal, and I'll explain where you can find those in Blackboard here in a sec. But so each week, you're going to be asked to reflect on a given topic. A lot of times, you will actually be asked to reflect on something from the interpersonal conflict book, since it is so dense. But there's going to be a point about week 6 of the semester that you're going to start every other week reflecting on a work-based plan entry and sharing that with each other so that you can get to know each other. And I'll explain what that work-based plan is in a minute. I do not want you to use AI for these reflections or responses. All right. I know, because I've said you can use AI for other things, that it's tempting just to use it for the whole class. But I was reading an article today which talked about the importance of writing to actually know what we think, to actually kind of discover. And it's that process of writing that kind of helps us actually show what we're learning, and to show what it is that we we're exploring, and questions that we might be having. Now, with that said, I often use Grammarly. That's an AI that's like a spell checker. Okay, so I'm not saying you can't use Grammarly, but I would rather, I don't want you to do any generative AI stuff that's going to be writing or making up things for you for these discussion posts. Okay, or for your journal entries. So to find these, all of the assignments are in this assignment tab. And so you'll see the weekly discussion post. They're all worth 10 points. The journal entries actually are just so that I can kind of check in on the online student. I'm not going to be able to have conversations with you in class or with them in class. So if you ever don't attend on a Thursday night, then, or if we for some reason don't have class on a Thursday night, then I will want you to do the journal post as well. So weekly discussion post, and I've then built out through week 4 at this point. I guess it's week 4 that I actually start with the work-based plan entry. But this first week, you're going to introduce yourself. Notice that when you go into these, that there are times in which, in the first 3 of them, I'm asking you to create a 3 to 5 minute video. And my reason for that is it's because I would like for people to hear your voice, to see your voice, to see your face. That way, people can kind of get to know each other. This builds a little bit of a cohort kind of feel. We in this Thursday night class are going to get to know each other, but it also helps with the people that are online. So for this first week, you click on this, and it gives you this discussion topic. And each week, these are due on Sunday night at 11:59 p.m., your post. And that's the first part of this, and that's worth 5 points. And then the second part will be due on Wednesday at 11:59 p.m. the following week. That allows everybody to have time to be able to listen to, or in the cases, sometimes there'll be a written discussion post, read the post and actually respond. So the initial prompt is to imagine a world in which conflict is handled well. And all of you have life experiences that you're coming into this with. So I want you to, based on your life experiences, what are the top 3 things that you would be happening in a world where conflict is handled well? And I will tell you that you can pick interpersonal world, you can pick work world, you can pick, if you're CAT, for example, political and the realm of international conflict. Okay, I don't care what the context is. So when you're defining your world, it can be as narrow or as large as you want. So imagine a world in which conflict is handled well, and based on your life experiences, what are the top 3 things that would be happening? So basically, what would it be looking like? What would people be doing in terms of speaking and listening behaviors? And if you were to help create such a world, what are the top 3 lessons from your life that would guide you? So you're basically top 3 things that would be happening, and then think back to your own experiences and how could you give advice to the people that are involved in doing those top 3 things or trying those top 3 things? What advice would you give them? What 3 pieces of advice would you give them that would be from your own experiences that you have learned that would guide you? So after you kind of write down those thoughts, I want you to create a 3 to 5 minute video, guys. I don't want this to be long. Okay, so really, seriously, short and sweet, 3 to 5 minutes. Just tell us who you are, answer those 2 questions, and make sure that you share at least one personal example about how your beliefs about conflict were shaped. So that's going to be kind of, you're somehow tying in your own personal life to this. And then you're going to submit it as a MP4 file if it's, if you're just doing it off of your phone, or if it's large enough, you can do it as a shareable Google Drive file, or if you want to make an unlisted YouTube link, you can do that as well. So then you'll listen to several of your classmates. So 3 of your classmates. You don't have to do everybody's. You can listen to all of them if you want, but then pick out which one you want to respond to. Respond to classmates who haven't received very many responses, and then you're going to write for each response at least 150 words per reply that compares your experiences to theirs. How is it similar? How is it different? And then tying in some concept or example from the readings that build on the post. So demonstrating that you've done the reading for the week. So that is due basically at the end of every week. There'll be something like this. Okay, and I know this is a short week at this point, but so I gave you something that was kind of relatively easy, I think, to do for you to think about. So are there any questions about that first discussion post, first of all? All right. So that's the first thing that's due this week. And let me just show you the folks who are online. Excuse me. If you aren't here, then you need to do this weekly journal post. And I've only got week 1 up here, but when you see this, I only see this. The discussion post everybody sees, but you're basically answering some of the same questions that the people did at the beginning. And then you're just describing some things that you noticed based on things that you've learned from the reading for the week. Okay, so that just keeps you kind of accountable, keeps the people that aren't here accountable for participating. Those of you who show up on a Thursday night, if you are showing up and you're active, you do not need to do those journal entries. They're not worth any points, but it's my way of just kind of seeing how people are doing. The other thing that you need to start on this week is a work-based conflict learning plan. And as I was listening to you guys tonight, I realized that not all of you are currently in jobs. Cat probably, I mean, taking care of your animal is not necessarily a job, okay? And I think even about, Tony, you're in a transition right now. So we're going to be flexible when it calls it work-based conflict intervention plan. I put here, apply communication theory in your workplace or in a place where you volunteer or attend school. I could even broaden this out to a long-term relationship that you have. Okay, so the main thing that I'm wanting you to do with this work-based conflict learning plan, and you'll see this in a minute, is that you're going to work on this plan all semester long. And you're going to pick specific things that you want to improve on in terms of conflict in that setting, whatever the setting is. Okay, so again, I didn't put long-term relationships in here, but workplace, place where you volunteer, it could be even, as a student. So whatever you want to pick here, you're going to do this. And you're going to use, this time I am going to allow you to use AI. And next Thursday night, I'm actually going to show you how I would go about doing this with an AI tool. but I want you to be thinking about this, and I'll tell you, kind of how I do it. But utilize AI to assist in identifying tasks and reflect on real world experiences. You're going to actually, it's going to help you identify which things that you're going to be working on, but then you will write up each of the work-based entries. So you can kind of see we've got one due almost every other week, basically. Yeah, until November 9th. But the intervention plan is what's due in 2 weeks. Okay. So this would be due 8/31. So we've got a little bit of time for you to be working on this. All right. So when you go here, you'll view the instructions. And you'll see it, and use a generative AI tool of your choice. Now, I happen to, I pay for a version of ChatGPT that's a little bit more robust than just the ChatGPT that people sometimes only have like 2 or 3 entries that they can put in a particular day, the free version. Google has a Notebook LM. Claude is also one that's got a pretty robust, I've not used it, but I've heard it's pretty good in terms of a free version. So you're going to use that to customize a semester-long personalized plan. So what you're going to do first of all is input the course learning outcomes from the syllabus into the tool, along with a description of a current, recent job or volunteer or student role, including specific duties that involve working with others. So I don't know that you would do this, Tony, but hypothetically, you could do this in your caregiving role. Okay. I know it's, so it doesn't have to be a work thing. At this point, probably does need to be human based. Okay. So I wouldn't just have Kat do it with her dog, but it could be with the people that she takes. Maybe she takes the dog to training, and maybe there's places where people are concerned about, anyway, you can be somewhat flexible here, but I do want humans to be involved, and you'll have to come up with a description. And have this, whatever it is that you pick has to have specific things that involve working with others. And this is the thing that I really love about AI, is that you can ask it to ask you 3 questions about your role, one at a time, so it can gain a better understanding of how you work with others in that role. Okay. And so I did this just to illustrate. I initially put in the course learning outcomes to ChatGPT. And then I said, I'm basically going to want you to create a semester-long personalized plan for this, apply conflict course tools for my class. I'm going to provide you, first of all, a description of my current job. And then I'm going to have you ask me 3 questions one at a time to gain a better understanding of how I work with others in that role. And then it will say, okay, I'll wait for your description of the job. And so I put in the description of the job, and then it'll say, are you ready for something like, are you ready for me to ask you 3 questions? And I'll be like, yes. And I want them asked one at a time so that I'm not overwhelmed. And when I saw the kind of questions it was asking me, I was like, oh my gosh, I have to really think about these, because it was asking me, where do I experience conflict in my current job? So it was really wanting to find out a little bit more about that. So then after you ask it to answer the 3 questions, you're going to ask it to generate 10 to 15 job specific tasks or situations where conflict competencies could be rated or analyzed. If you feel like, and sometimes there are times in which the tool for me, doesn't understand what I do, then you can provide the AI tool with feedback and further instructions. Then what you're going to do, and all this is prep work, okay? But what you're going to be turning in here is this part, along with your AI conversation. Choose 5 tasks or situations that you're going to focus on this semester. And so starting in week 4, every other week, you're going to focus on one of those tasks or situations that you want to be improving your communication on. So when you're choosing the 5 tasks, you want to make sure you're choosing it from these 10 to 15 job specific tasks or situations. You want to make sure that you're picking things that you really want to improve on, that you're interested in actually, I really want to get better at that portion of this role. Okay. And the reason why I'm doing this whole assignment is because I know that I will be covering a lot of things this semester. We will be doing a lot of things in the readings and other assignments, and I want this class to be applicable to what you want to be learning. And this assignment is the way that I do that, that you actually pick out the things that you want to be working on. If you want to, you can actually, let's say you were going to pick a relationship, long-term relationship, you could actually ask the long-term relationship person, okay, here are the 10 to 15 situations. Which one of these do you think I might best need to work on? Now, beware that they may think of things they want you to work on that are not important to you, but you could also, or you could ask a supervisor to let you know that, okay? So if applicable, receive feedback. So you're going to submit your AI prompts as well as the 10 to 15 job specific tasks. Then without the use of AI, you're going to explain why you chose the 5 you did to focus your reflections. And then at the end of the semester, without the use of AI, you're going to write a 3 to 5 page double-spaced reflection that tells me basically how you implemented, how it went over the semester. Okay, so it's kind of it's a semester-long project that you're going to be working on. Each time there's going to be a time in which these entries, actually, when we go to them, you're going to, when we start at them in week 4, you're going to basically talk about which part of the task creates conflict, what concepts have you read about that can help you with the conflict situation. So that's where you can apply things that you've been reading or we've covered in class. You know, what's one thing you'd like to implement in the future, and then putting your implementation idea into a SMART goal. And that's all without the use of AI. So you pick the first one, pick the second one, the third one, fourth one, and then you'll notice that in these weekly discussion posts, starting every other week in week 4, you're going to actually share what you wrote with your group, the classmates, and get feedback on the ideas and the goals and things that you're setting. So make sure that when you pick the 5, that you pick things that, and when you're picking the situation or the setting, that you're picking things that you're also willing for your classmates to be involved in kind of helping you problem solve. Okay. So those are the 2, along with the readings, those are the 2 things that you're going to be working on. Discussion post due on Sunday, and then the reflection the following Wednesday, and then the following Sunday, along with another discussion post, the following Sunday will be that work-based plan. What questions do you have about those 2 assignments?
So I do have a question as in reference, obviously, my situation, but I am trying to get back in the workforce. So when I'm looking at this work-based plan, can I kind of do it? I'm trying to gather my thoughts here. Can I do it from a perspective of not also of focusing on my role like in a long-term relationship, because that's what I am now, but also the transition of getting back into the workforce?
So basically dividing it into 2 different settings or contexts. So maybe 2 things are going to be related to the long-term relationship and 3 are going to be the work. I'm fine with that. You just have to explain that in the first assignment. Okay. The other thing I would say, Kat, is that if you already have had a lot of work experience, and so you're maybe not in a current job now, but imagine what the job would be that would be the ideal job that you would like to have. And you could actually find a job description for that job. Okay. And actually ask it. I mean, the questions that you would have that you kind of interview AI with, it's going to be a little bit different, but you could actually tell it, this is the job that I want to have in the future. I know I don't currently have it, but I've had experience in this, this, and this, and this in HR, okay, in the military. So as you're thinking about building out these tasks that I can work on, I want you to ask me 3 questions that could help me improve my skills based on what I've already had experience in, and actually to help me with this new job. So
Actually, that's perfect.
I'm actually okay with that as well. So if you want to do it that way, that is fine. Or you can split it between 2 contexts or 2 settings.
I think I'll go with what you said as the job that I want versus obviously military and civilian HR is different. And I think that is perfect because the job that I want would be civilian HR, and I can do that. Thank you for the idea. I think I like that one. That one would be perfect for me.
The other thing that I found that's really helpful is whenever we're using, especially with ChatGPT, when I use it, is I tell ChatGPT to play a role. So you are an HR specialist, like a director of HR in a large company, and I am needing you to act as a consultant for me. So you can actually tell it to do a particular role and start your whole talking with it that way. Now, AI is only as good as the materials that are put into it. And there, some of the people who have talked about the ethics of using AI have really talked about, how you can force AI almost to give you a specific answer that is not necessarily the right answer, or some of the criticism of it has been, for people who are self-harming, or were looking for ways to build a bomb, or looking for, just things that are really negative things. And so, but I have found that it is really useful as in a consultant kind of role if I tell it what to do. Now, I've only used that in ChatGPT. I've not tried that strategy in Claude. Notebook LM, Google Notebook LM is a little bit different. It oftentimes will want you to, before it ever chats with you, want you to actually put in some documents that it can learn from. So it requires sometimes for you to feed it things. And so before you can actually have a chat with it, but once you do feed it some documents, here are the kind of things I'm interested in here, you might have to do a little bit of background work to do that, then it will be able to answer it as well. That's connected to your Google accounts. And so the advantage of that one is it's free and the university has got that as part of our Google interface. But my mine of choice is ChatGPT, only because it seems to be able to do that kind of role playing. So
Awesome. Thank you. I use ChatGPT. I paid the $20. It does amazing things, but I never thought about how to use it as a consultant. So I will definitely do that. Thank you for that idea.
Yeah, I read a book that really kind of changed my life, and this is okay. I'm not trying to like sell AI, but I have to find my Amazon order list, because and this is going to be funny because I'm not going to share my screen. Make sure that I'm not, because Amazon is like, do you have a boyfriend that always just drops off packages to you? So because Amazon is like, yeah, I hear a lot. But I'm going to see if I can find the name of the book that this is not required for you all to look at, but it's the one that kind of taught me how to do these prompts. And it's really, there's a whole kind of group now or research out there on how to do prompts and do them well. And that's the key for using AI really well. And so it may be that I end up having to, I don't want to spend a huge amount of time finding this, but the fact that I'm having to go through multiple pages just shows that I have a problem. I'm in a group that right now that's doing a lot of reading on this this AI. I think it's called the AI Driven Leader. I think that's the name of it. And now I'm just not finding it. So anyway, let me just see if that is yeah, AI Driven Leader by Geoff, Geoff Woods. So anyway, not required in this class, but could be something interesting to you to take a look at. So he is a CEO, and that teaches CEOs basically how to use AI as a thought partner, not to replace you, but to be your consultant or your thought partner. So anyway, all right. What are the questions about the assignments for this coming week, next 2 weeks?
I mean, for me, I don't have any questions at the moment, but I feel like once I begin the assignment, if I run into questions, which is normally when I will have questions, I'll probably email you more than likely.
Yeah, so those of you who have had me for class before know that I typically respond back to emails within 24 hours. And so do try to, to send me questions, even if you don't, I mean, there's nothing that's stupid here. So feel free to do that. I do get if you send me a message through Blackboard, it does come into my email, so I can actually see that as well. But emailing me is probably the easiest way to do that. So. All right, so based on looking over the syllabus already, there was one other thing that I wanted to draw your attention to and kind of just explain why I'm doing it, and that is the whole connection with Providence Park. Has anybody ever heard of Providence Park? Okay, so one of the students that graduated from our conflict management certificate program last spring has connected me actually with this organization. And I'm going actually on Saturday for a tour of part of what they're doing over there, but I've already met with them. I've done a 1-hour interview on a podcast that I help with as well, that you all will listen to later in the semester. But they are they're building a village of tiny homes outside of Little Rock. And these are meant to be permanent housing for the chronically unhoused. And so when I say chronically unhoused, it's people that have been homeless for a year or more. And those of you, if you've ever studied homelessness, I'm reading a book right now that's basically talking about the working homeless. You know that homelessness depends on, the HUD definition of homelessness can be you're on the streets, but it also is you don't have a safe place to live that's good for you and your family. And so they are building these tiny homes. Their goal is it's in 3 phases, is to have 400 tiny homes. And for about every 10 homes, they have a person who lives on site. That's kind of serves as like, if you guys ever went to college where there was an RA in the dorm, a resident assistant in the dorm, they have people that are actually on site that are going to be helping with like every 10 homes. The homes, I actually saw it. They have a small living space. There is a toilet and a sink, a little tiny kitchenette, and a bedroom. They have a community kitchen and a community laundry. It feels almost like, except that you're in a home, not in a dorm. It feels kind of like living communally, right? And as I started listening to them, and I said, what is it that you guys need to be helped? Because we were connected to them. Dr. Oliver Blackburn and I went on to meet with them. And they're like, we need everything. And I said, well, what if I could have my class this fall actually work in small groups or teams to create some training plans for helping deal with conflict for the people that are like the people on site that are living there. They call them missionals. I'm not sure where that term came from, but that's what they call them. The missionals and the people who live there, okay? If the training could be done to help them deal with conflict, because there's going to be conflict between the people who are living there, just because it's human beings. We have conflict, right? And so I am kind of threading throughout the semester this Providence Park conflict ecosystem, so that by the end of the semester, you're going to be working in teams to actually work with each other to try to design conflict management training plans, just 1 to 2 hour training plans that are focused on specific aspects of conflict between the neighbors, the people that live there, and the missionals. So we'll brainstorm as we go through the topics for that. But your final project's going to have some individual components and some team components. You don't have to worry about it yet because it's not assigned yet. But I wanted you to know a little bit about why I picked that. Dr. Oliver Blackburn, whenever she teaches this class, has typically had the students in the conflict class create training plans for somebody. And when I heard that these people kind of just needed a whole lot of things, I thought our group could actually create training plans that could be used for something that is real. And that could be something you put on a resume. So, Jeff, I see your hand up. Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually really interesting because when I was in the social work program back in the day, a little while ago here, I was actually required to attend one of these virtual seminars with that the Cows Library System put up, and that's when they first proposed that little tiny village, and they were saying they were having a hard time figuring out where it was going. And actually, if it's the same one, just a week or two ago, I was walking campus and I ran into someone just chit-chatting conversations. And he was actually on his way to our construction management program to look for students to help build the tiny homes for him too. So really interesting. But another point is just projects like this. I mean, that they were probably entertaining this idea, but 2021 around that time, and we're here 2025, and they're still trying to get this going, and how long these large projects can really take. But yeah, it's pretty cool. It's been tossed around for a while.
Well, cool, Jeff, that you have a connection there. I've seen in the paper there are actually several kinds of initiatives like this that are happening in Central Arkansas right now, and some of them are temporary housing, and some of them are permanent. They're intending for this particular one. It's actually modeled after a group in Austin, Texas. And I actually have some connections with the people in Austin. Recently just finished reading this book. It's not required for the class, but this guy who wrote it, Alan Graham, is the one that started the tiny home villages in Austin, Texas, and it's called Community First Village. And it truly is like a little city when if it actually comes completely to fruition. Um, they're going to have dog parks, they're going to have um, places where people can worship if they want. They're going to have even a walking labyrinth for people who are not maybe as in more of the Christian tradition. And so, although that can be in the Christian tradition as well. And it's intended to be a place that people can stay forever, and it becomes their permanent home, which there are a few places like that around, very few places. So anyway, I just wanted you to know that a little bit about why I chose that is because this is like your practical kind of, not just am I going to be applying these concepts to my own life, but I'm also going to be applying this to help other people in terms of training. So what questions do you have for me right now about the class before we go into some highlights from the two books from tonight? Anything from the syllabus? Okay, well, I don't see any. And again, you may have questions as you get into class, like Latara was talking about more. I typically, I'll just show you where this is. I think I mentioned this in the introduction to the course video as well. Under weekly materials, I typically will be putting, and I've just started building out week 2, so it's not completely finished, although it's got more in it than week 1 at some level. So I typically will put in a note-taking handout, and there are times in which there's going to be a video that we will either watch in class or that I'll have you watch. We're going to actually watch this one tonight. It's about 14 minutes long here in a second. But the note-taking handout, if you click on it, for the people who are watching online, is you can actually go here and print this out if you want to, or make a copy of it so that you can be taking notes on it, whatever your preference is. But it just shows you basically what it is that we've covered. And I try to stay pretty close to this, but I don't always get to it. So what's remaining tonight is we're going to introduce some things from the readings. And just some highlights from the readings, and then listen to something from Yuri, connecting the two texts as well together. So that's what we're going to do for the rest of this time tonight. So just want you to know that. So because whenever we have a time like this, I always like to have a 5-minute break kind of in between. So that's what we're going to do now, is we're going to take a 5-minute break. And feel free, by the way, because this is 6 to 8, to eat during our session. I don't mind seeing you eat. Okay. So feel free to do that. So if you want to bring back something to eat, you can do that. But let's come back at 7:05 and we'll see you in just a sec. Okay. So I want to introduce the readings. And remember I said that the Barry and Hawker, or Hawker and Wilmot, if you are doing the 10th edition, book is very, very dense. So I'm going to actually kind of point out some things that I want you to spend a little bit of time on in that chapter. You can read the whole thing, and you could spend more time on other things if you want to in the chapter, but I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But I thought, first of all, before I do that, I have some quotes that I want you to react to here. And I want you just initially to say, do you agree or disagree? So we're going to kind of take a straw poll vote. All right. And in the chat, what I would like for you to do is do you agree or disagree with this? The world needs more conflict, not less. That's the first one. The world needs more conflict, not less. Agree or disagree? Pat agrees, Jeff agrees, Tony agrees. Latar, thank you for standing up and being different, disagreeing. All right, who do we have left? We get everybody? So when we think about this, let's have Latar, you answer first. Why do you disagree with that statement?
Well, because I was reading the next statement underneath it, and I agree more with that one, which is just knowing how to deal with conflict. I don't think more conflict is the answer when most people don't even know how to, work through conflict in a way that is non destructive or super confrontational, and that'll just kind of heighten to violence. So that's kind of automatically when I think about conflict, I think it's gonna go.
So you think of it as a destructive conflict. So you're kind of the world needs more conflict, not less. You're thinking of destructive conflict.
Yes.
It's like, oh, we don't need that. Okay.
No.
Well, that makes sense in terms of that's kind of the frame that you're putting on it. So the other of you who said that you agreed with that statement, the world needs more conflict, not less. Let's hear one or two of you talk about why you think that's true.
I'll go. So I agreed with that, and really it's agreeing to the point of what is the context of that actual conflict that we're talking about, because yeah, we don't need more destructive conflict. We need more constructive conflict that put us to do better and address at them and address at the conflicts going forward. Destructive conflict really doesn't benefit everybody. It just brings everybody further down. And I mean, if you use conflict in kind of the survival of the fittest, but you take out the destructive aspects of it, we'll hopefully achieve higher and do better, as is seen kind of throughout history, where conflict has caused a lot of people to have to step up and become deeper and better individuals and trying to go forward in societies. That aspect of conflict has always kind of helped humanity survive and strive. We don't need to become stagnant.
Yeah, we can become better versions of ourselves. We can actually create progress because we see that there's something that needs to be solved here. Then we have to kind of work through it together and don't have easy solutions. Okay, makes sense. Jeff, Kat, or Lindsay, anything else to add on why you agreed with that statement? Oh, you disagreed, Lindsay, so we'll come back to you in a second. So Kat or Jeff?
I was gonna say, I think we as humans tend to see conflict first as a big thing, but it really is it can be a bunch of small things. It's not necessarily nothing big, but the world is a place of cause and effect. So you're always going to have conflict. It's never going to be gone. And that is how we got to some of the best and brightest ideas and to where we are now. We won't move forward or progress, as we said just a minute ago, unless we have conflict. What we don't need to get to is how Latara was saying is people don't know how to deal with conflict. So we need to learn how to engage in conflict in a healthy manner to where it doesn't end up being destructive or negative.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it leads us to having better solutions and coming up with ways of moving forward. Lindsay, I missed your disagree. So tell us a little bit more about why you disagree with the statement.
So I'm a woman of few words, for those of you that don't know me. But I think that we need more solutions, not more conflict. And I don't think that more conflict will equal more solutions. I think it would equal more destruction. That's why the crime rates are so high.
Okay. So I think as I hear you all, we even have differences in our opinions about what conflict is. So real quick, just take out your phones and look up a definition of conflict. And I just want you to read it out, whoever gets theirs first. And what is conflict?
As a noun, conflict is a serious disagreement or argument, typically a protracted one. And as a verb, it is to be incompatible or at a variance or to clash.
Okay. So those are a lot of negative kind of connotation words there. Protracted disagreement, clashing, incompatible. Somebody else, another definition.
I can give
Well,
ChatGPT's definition.
Yeah, see what
I'll-
ChatGPT, what is,
Well, I'm gonna let Tony talk, but I'll post ChatGPT in the comments so that way everybody can read it. So we get
Okay.
both answers at the same.
good, thank you, Kat. Tony,
Conflict that I pulled from the text was an expressed struggle between at least two interdependent parties who perceive incompatible goals, scarce resources, and interference from others in achieving their goals.
okay.
That was supposed to
And
pull
we're
from
going to kind of unpack that a little bit in terms of what that means because they spend quite a bit of time in the text talking about that. All right, ChatGPT, who pulled it from wherever, we don't know, lots of places. Conflict generally defined as a situation in which two or more parties perceive their goals, interests, needs, or values as incompatible. So I mentioned that. Leading to tension, disagreement, or opposition can occur at many levels, intrapersonally, so within you, interpersonal, between two people, group or organizational, among teams, organizations, or departments, and societal across larger communities. And then it says conflict isn't always negative. It can encourage growth, innovation, and stronger relationships when managed constructively. However, if unresolved or poorly handled, it can lead to escalation, stress, and breakdowns in communication. Curious, Kat, what did you put in as your prompt for ChatGPT on that?
I just asked it to define it.
Okay, so you didn't ask it to tell good or bad. It gave you a lot then. Okay, good to hear. All right, so the next quote that I want to put into the chat from the Uri text is on page 9. And he says, the real problem is not conflict, but rather the destructive way we deal with it. I think we've already kind of dealt with that. Maybe it's not the conflict itself. Maybe it's the destructive way that we deal with it. All right, let's move to this. I'm going to actually skip the third one and then use this one from the Berry and Hawker book. And it may be a different page or quote in the 10th edition. When conflict is viewed as a problem to be solved instead of a battle to be won or interaction to be avoided, creative solutions can be found. All right, so I think it all comes down to how you define conflict as to whether or not we need more conflict or it can be done good or not. So as we think about this, let's kind of go through what Tony said, the Berry and Hawker's definition of conflict and the 5 features. So I'm just going to, if you want to, you can just write down kind of definitions here, but you can go back and look at them in the chapter if you want to as well. So the first part of that definition is expressed struggle. Expressed struggle. Now I had a little bit of trouble with this part of the definition because the part of the expressed part, they talk about this in terms of we have to communicate that we're in conflict in order for it to be a conflict. And I personally don't think that's necessarily true. I think I can have a conflict with a person or with myself, and I don't necessarily have to express it. I may not even be aware, feel the tension inside. I don't know if I'm expressing it or not, but they actually say express struggle, and they're really emphasizing there that a conflict has to be communicated either verbally or non-verbally for it to truly exist as a conflict. Now, whether you agree with that or not, up to you, but that's the first part of the definition. The struggle becomes conflict only when it's acted upon or conveyed. And I guess when you think about your kids, Latara, thinking about your little one, you know, you're teaching him already. There's some things you just don't say, you know, and we're taught that. There are just some things just don't, you know, keep that to yourself because that would cause a conflict. So in that sense, expressing it is certainly an important part. The second element of the definition is interdependence. When you think of interdependence, what do you think of? How would you define interdependence? Anybody?
Both parties need the other to a certain extent, whether they actually realize it or not.
So, and what you do impacts me.
Yes.
Okay. We'll talk in a couple of weeks about the whole idea of systems in which conflicts happen and how when one person acts this way, it has impact. And if one person acts and it has impact, that means that you are interdependent with each other. Jeff, I'm guessing even in your admissions job that you all have, there's certain things that if you would show up and do, it would have an impact on others. You are interdependent with each other. In you know, and even in the way that you talk to students as well. So we have to have at least two parties. The behavior of one impacts the other. Without that mutual influence, there's no conflict. Third part of the definition is perceived incompatible goals. Perceived incompatible goals. And I like that they included the word perceived because sometimes people have what they think are incompatible goals and they're really not incompatible. Okay. You'll hear later a story that Yuri tells about these three brothers who were fighting over the inheritance, and the inheritance had to do with camels, actually, or animals, and they couldn't figure out how to equally divide them or have them divided. And they thought, you know, if you get this, then I don't get this, and you know, it's a zero. They call it a zero-sum game sometimes, and so if I get something, then you're going to not get something. So when the people involved think that the objectives can't be achieved simultaneously at the same time. So it's a perception, though, of incompatible goals. And similarly, there's perceived scarce resources, which is the fourth part. So we believe that there's limited access to something that's valuable: time, money, recognition, support. There's a resource that's in short supply. So I'll give you an example here of all of these together in just a minute. But there's oftentimes a belief, and that kind of goes back to that zero sum of if you win, I lose. So there's not enough to go around. So I have to get what I can get and get it now. The last part of their definition is interference from others, and the belief that there's actually someone that's actively getting in the way of another's goals, even whether it's intentionally or not. So there's somebody that's blocking what it is that I am wanting to do. So I had a situation, a work situation in which the faculty some of the faculty and I were in conflict with each other. It ended up becoming something that I had to bring in a mediator or consultant to work on. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail because some of you will know these faculty members because it's my current department. And so it had to do with who got to teach summer school. And the belief was that there was not enough classes to go around for everybody to get to teach summer. So there was that perceived scarce resources. They believed that the people that were concerned about it believed that the way that I was assigning summer school teaching was actually not fair. So I was the blocker. So I was the interference. There was an expressed desire to have a meeting about it. So everybody ended up knowing that there was a struggle here. As we met about it, we began to realize that we have very different opinions about the values that should be implemented in a summer teaching schedule. Some people really viewed equity and everybody having equal share and equal shot as important. Other people believe that seniority should have the most, should be the kind of goals. And so really all 5 of those were present. We had an expressed struggle. Whatever happened when one person, was talking and mentioning their perception, and then other people would kind of get offended by something that person said, that interdependence was happening. There were perceived incompatible goals. If you get to teach, then I don't get to teach because we don't have enough to go around. And there's somebody that's blocking this, that's causing the problem, that's interfering. So that's just an example of where the larger view of conflict, but definitely a conflict. So another thing to focus on in chapter 1 from the Berry and Hawker's book is the whole idea of destructive conflict, how they define destructive conflict. Curious Cat, put in what is destructive conflict into ChatGPT and see what it says, and then put it into the chat for us. In the Berry and Hawker book, they say that destructive conflict are patterns of interactions that seriously undermine relationships and escalate tension rather than resolve issues. All right, so if you look in what ChatGPT said, and I'll read this for the sake of the people who are online. Destructive conflict is a type of conflict that harms relationships, communication, or productivity rather than helping resolve issues. It occurs when disagreements escalate in negative ways, focusing on winning, blaming, or hurting others, rather than working towards understanding or solutions. And then it gives key features of destructive conflict: escalation, personal attacks, rigid positions, breakdown of communication so that things become hostile, defensive, or shut down, and negative outcomes leading to resentment, mistrust, stress, and damaged relationships. So conflict doesn't solve the issue. It actually makes the workplace more hostile and less productive. And that's, I think, really what Latara and Lindsay were talking about when they disagreed with the statement of, do we need more conflict? Okay, it was that kind of conflict. So look and see how they describe destructive conflict. Now, they talk about in that chapter 1, the 4 horsemen of John Gottman's 4 horsemen. Some of you may have heard of those in like interpersonal and conflict classes before. How many of you have heard of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse from John Gottman? Anybody? So Kat has, Latara. What John Gottman's work is, he's done thousands and thousands of couples where he actually believes he can predict divorce. And there are multiple things that he believes actually leads to relationships not staying together. And one of them is these 4 horsemen that show that the relationship is breaking down. And the 4 are criticism, defensiveness, stonewalling, and contempt. He actually has found that there's a difference between, in typical gendered relationships, and I know it's not everybody's not typical in terms of this, but men typically have certain kinds of reactions to some of these, and women have certain reactions to others. Now, this is not necessarily talked about in your book, so but I'll just bring this out when we think about these. What he does in his labs is he actually puts people like heart monitors and oxygen level, blood pressure cuffs, just to see how people are physiologically reacting to conflicts. And what he found, and I'll just see if you can guess, is that one of these, and I'll define them quickly here in a minute, but one of these actually causes the blood pressure of the man, the typical blood pressure of the man, to go up. And another one caused the blood pressure of the woman to go up, a different one. And again, this is a typical kind of more stereotypical male-female relationship. But so as I go through these 4, you might think about which one of these you think he found over time in these cross-sex couples led to that. So criticism is a person, when you're attacking a person's character, you're really going below the belt. You are basically telling them that they are irredeemable as a person. It's not just providing a constructive complaint. It's not just giving feedback. It's, you're just like you're mother, or you're just like your father, or you're never going to change. It's that kind of really intense criticism. That typically is followed up by defensiveness, which the person responds to that criticism by denying responsibility or blaming back. So, yeah, well, you think I'm just like my mother. Well, you have a room to talk. You're just like your father. Okay. So it's this kind of escalatory kind of spiral that happens. So that's responding to the criticism to defensiveness. The third one that they mentioned in the text is called stonewalling, and that's when the person just kind of shuts down. They just kind of quit listening. They may stay in that presence of the other person, but they quit listening. They're either walking away, or they're on their phone, or they're just not paying attention. They just kind of are watching that person continue to talk, but they're just not paying attention and they're not saying anything. And there's beautiful King. So, hi, Latara. Little one, if you guys see her little one there, growing up, goodness. So that's stonewalling, so withdrawing or shutting down communication. And then contempt is that real open hostility. It can be done with sarcasm, name calling, demeaning the other person. It could be just done with a look that you just know you can't stand that person. So what's your guess in his research in cross-sex relationships? Which one caused, when it happened to them, caused the blood pressure to go up the fastest for the man? Criticism, defensiveness, stonewalling, or contempt? When it was done to them, which one do you think caused the blood pressure to go up the most?
I'm gonna say defensiveness.
Okay. Possible answer, not the right one.
Did you
But
say something about criticalness or
yeah, criticism.
criticism? I will go with that.
Yeah, it's criticism. It's as soon as they feel criticized, they start having flooded, their emotions start being flooded. And so the things that are going on, and he would actually ask them as their blood pressure would go up, he would say, okay, I see your blood pressure is going up. What self-talk is going on in your mind? And their self-talk would be things like, I can't believe she is saying that about me. Doesn't she even know what's going on? And the self-talk actually, they might not have said it out loud, but it was causing the emotions and the blood pressure to stay elevated. Okay. Which one do you think he found that most women, their blood pressure started going up on?
Stonewalling.
Absolutely, Tony. Okay. It's when all of a sudden there is nothing happening on the other side. That is like, oh my gosh, this person is not going to respond to me. And so that actually leads to that nag withdrawal cycle that is stereotypical between men and women. Oh, they must not have heard me. Oh, well, let me see if I can say it another way. Nag, bring it up again. Well, they're continuing to withdraw because their blood pressure's up. They're feeling flooded. They know they got to be careful what they're going to say because they don't want to go into this escalatory spiral or hurt the other person. And so they're just stonewalling. They are trying to control their emotions, not always, but in this kind of scenario. And that just causes the woman's blood pressure to, I'm just not even being heard. So it creates this cycle, which is one of the cycles that the spirals that they talk about is they talk about escalatory spirals and avoidance spirals. Now, I would argue that there is an escalatory avoidance spiral. They don't talk about that. The escalatory spiral, when they talk about this in the book, is you say something and I up the ante in what I say. I'm yelling back. I yell louder. Okay, more and more. And then the avoidance spiral is where avoid. But what they don't talk about here is that oftentimes what John Gottman found was that the spiral actually included both things, escalation and avoidance. And the more avoidance happened, the more escalation happened. So as you all look at that, that part of the chapter, you might want to just pay attention to that as being something kind of interesting. So that's really all I want to bring out in terms of the Berry and Hawker chapter. And by the way, what I'm going to start doing near the beginning of each class period after we go over assignments is I want to have everybody kind of go around and say, what's one thing that you found helpful interesting or confusing or you disagreed with, something that you kind of reacted to positively or negatively from both books or both readings. Okay. So next week I will go around and ask you all to say that, but I didn't expect you necessarily to have read, after with school just starting yesterday, the 2 chapters for this week. Okay. But I will want you to have done that for in the future. So it won't just be me only me talking. So, all right. Let's turn next to the Uri text. And I thought it would be helpful just to hear him talk. And so I'm going to share my screen and see if I can do it in a way that we'll be able to show a portion of the screen. And so hang on just a second. This is talk. I may not show the whole thing, but this is kind of an overview of his approach. And I think it's helpful just to hear it. Leadership superpowers. So what I'd like for you to do as you're listening to this is to take notes so that you can tell me what it was that kind of stood out for you from what he's talking about here as he introduces his model.
Hi, I'm William Uri. I'm co-founder of Harvard's program on negotiation, co-author of Getting to Yes, and author most recently of Possible: How We Survive and Thrive in an Age of Conflict. I was trained as an anthropologist, and I've spent the last 45 years working as a negotiation advisor and mediator in some of the world's toughest conflicts, from the Cold War to the Middle East, from bitter coal strikes to boardroom battles, from partisan political fights to civil wars around the world. A few years ago, I was taking a hike in the mountains with my friend Jim Collins, well-known author of leadership classics like Good to Great, when he suddenly turned to me and asked, "William, do you think you could sum up the essence of all that you've learned about negotiation and dealing with difficult conflicts in a single sentence?" Well, I looked at him quizzically, but I thought about it, and on our next hike, I gave it my best try. And Jim looked at me and said, "Now go write the book." If I were a Martian anthropologist right now looking at humanity, I would say we live in a time of great paradox. Never before in human evolution have we enjoyed such an abundance of opportunities to solve the world's problems and live the life that we want for ourselves and our children. And yet at the same time, with the rapid changes and disruptions brought about by technological change like AI, geopolitical conflicts, domestic political polarization, economic crises, environmental crises, and so on, we face a wave of destructive conflict that's beginning to polarize every facet of our lives, from our workplaces to our families, to our community, to our world. And it's paralyzing our ability to work together and solve our problems. So my question is, how do we navigate this stormy time so that we can realize the enormous opportunities that we have at hand? Well, first, I would say we need to be realistic. We are not going to end conflict. Conflict is probably going to increase. Nor should we end conflict, because speaking as an anthropologist, I would say conflict is something natural. It's part of life. And in fact, we may actually need more conflict, not less. And by that, I mean the healthy conflict that allows us to engage our differences productively, to grow, and to change what needs to be changed, including to address all the injustices around us. So the choice we face is not to get rid of conflict. It's how to transform it. It's how to handle it in a different way. Because all too often, we tend to fall right into what I would call the 3A trap. The first A stands for attack, which usually provokes counterattack. And as Gandhi once said, an eye for an eye, and we all go blind. The second A stands for avoid. We just kind of ignore the problem, hoping it's going to go away, which doesn't solve anything. And the third A stands for accommodate. We give in. And often we do all three things. We avoid for a while, we give in, we even accommodate, and then we lose it. We go on the attack. Does that sound at all familiar? I mean, think about your own natural learning edge. You know, do you accommodate? Do you attack? Do you avoid? What is yours? And so the question is, what's the way out of this 3A trap? I would suggest it's to do the exact opposite of avoiding, which is actually to lean into the conflict with curiosity, to embrace it with creativity, and to transform it with collaboration. And by transform, I simply mean to change the form of conflict from destructive strife and fighting into constructive, creative negotiation. As I look back and reflect on the toughest conflicts I've been involved in the course of my life, from apartheid in South Africa, to war between Catholics and Protestants in Northern Ireland, to civil war in Colombia, what I see is that the conflict often continues, but the key thing is that the war ends, the conflict is transformed. So my question is,
Excuse me? How do you read so many books?
I don't. I listen.
What do you mean you listen?
I use this app called.
what do we need to do to transform our conflicts and navigate these very challenging times? I would suggest that we need three things above all. We need perspective, something that I use the metaphor of going to the balcony, which I'll explain in a moment. We need a way out, a bridge, and we're going to need often lots of help from others around us, the third side. So let's just take them one at a time. Let's start with perspective for a moment. When it comes to conflict, we are often our own worst enemies. What I've learned over these years, decades, is that the biggest obstacle to getting what I want in a negotiation is not what I think it is. It's not the difficult person on the other side of the table. It's the person on this side of the table. It's me. It's the person I look at in the mirror every morning. It lies in our very natural, very human, very understandable tendency to react, to act without thinking, to act out of fear and anger. We human beings were reaction machines. And as the old saying goes, when you're angry, you will make the best speech you will ever regret. You will send the best email you will ever regret. So what's the alternative? It's to do the exact opposite of reacting, which is to pause for a moment. It's to think about what you really want and how you can get there. Imagine yourself for a moment on a stage and go to the balcony. The balcony is simply a metaphor for a place of calm where you can keep your eyes on the prize and see the bigger picture. In other words, negotiation is an inside game. It starts from the inside out. And the best way to start the negotiation is by stopping. Start by stopping. So that sets us up for the next challenge, which is how do we find a way out? In today's tough conflicts, we need more than ever to be able to find a way out of the labyrinth of destructive fights, because the other side may be far from cooperative. They may be digging in, refusing to budge, pressuring, attacking, threatening. What do? Their position, their mind is far away from yours. It's like there's this huge chasm between where you are and where they are. And that chasm is filled with fear, anger, doubt, unmet needs, distrust, baggage from the past. Our challenge is to build a bridge over that chasm, not just an ordinary bridge, but a golden bridge. In other words, to create an attractive way out for them and for you. What's a way forward here? And instead of pushing, what I see successful negotiators do is the exact opposite. They attract. Instead of making it harder for the other side, which is what we tend to do sometimes in difficult situations, you do the exact opposite. You make it easier for them. Your job is to make it easier for them to make the decision you want them to make, easier for them to move in the direction you want them to move. So we need to leave our thinking for a moment, which is not so easy sometimes, and start the conversation where their mind is. Listen to them. try to put ourselves in their shoes and figure out what their needs are, what their fears are, so that you can find a way to address those needs while advancing your interests too. Well, one of my favorite exercises for doing that is to begin the negotiation by, when you're preparing, by writing the other side's victory speech. It's a thought experiment. Imagine for a moment the other side has said yes to your proposal. Unbelievable, but they said yes. Now, they have to explain to the people they care about, their constituents, their board of directors, their union workers, whatever it is, why they said yes to your proposal. Imagine how that speech would go. What would be their 3 key points of that victory speech? Now see your job as how can you help them deliver that victory speech? How do you make it so that they can be a hero in accepting your proposal? So whether it's asking your board for a decision or figuring out how to end a war, I find that that thought experiment of the victory speech can open up new creative possibilities that we hadn't imagined before. So that leads me to the third point, which is we often need to get some help, because in today's conflicts, it's not so easy to go to the balcony. It's maybe hard. It's not easy to build a golden bridge. People are burning bridges. People aren't going to the balcony. They're often going to the gutter. No, so no matter how good we might be, we're going to need help, often lots of it. And here's the very common mistake we make when things get rough. We tend to reduce the conflict to 2 sides. It's us against them. It's union against management. It's sales against manufacturing. What we forget is that in any conflict, there's always a third side, which is the people around us, the colleagues, the friends, the family, the neighbors, the allies, the neutrals, even mediators, and so on. That third side constitutes a huge, untapped potential resource for transforming the conflict. It's like a container within which even the hardest conflicts can begin to give way to dialogue, to listening, and to negotiation. The people around us can help calm the people who are fighting. It can bring the parties together, it can facilitate it, it can help them communicate, it can help them understand each other better. In other words, it can help them explore a way out, a golden bridge. And when the conflict is really hard, we may need a kind of community intervention. I call this a swarm. It's a term that often is used in Silicon Valley now for, it's like a critical mass of persuasive influence and assistance. You swarm the conflict, you swarm the difficulty, so that it can help the parties find a way through their difficulties. We need often to mobilize that third side to the surrounding community so that we can build what might be called a winning coalition for an agreement, for a good way forward. After all these decades working in tough conflicts and wars, people often ask me, are you an optimist or are you a pessimist? And I like to answer that actually I am a possibilist, because I believe in our human potential to transform even the toughest conflicts from destructive fights into creative negotiations. I believe it because I've seen it happen with my own eyes, in coal strikes, in bitter boardroom battles, in family feuds, and in many wars around the world. I've watched people unlock their hidden human potential and make the seemingly impossible become possible. So where there are obstacles, possibilists look for opportunities. It's a change in mindset. Possibilists aren't blind to the dark side of human nature. To be a possibilist means to look at the negative possibilities too, but then to use that perspective to motivate us to look for the positive possibilities that avert the worst and bring about the possible best. I've seen how conflict can bring out the worst in us, but I've also seen how it can bring out the best in us. So what was that single summary sentence I offered Jim Collins on that memorable mountain hike? It was, the path to possible is to go to the balcony, get that perspective, build a golden bridge, find that way out, and engage the third side. Get the help that you need. All together, all at once. Here's the good news. Each of these 3 Each of these three potentials, it's an innate human potential. It's something we just need to remember and to develop. The choice is ours. And I hope you will make these three innate human potentials, balcony, bridge, and third side, which I think of as our superpowers, make them your close friends and allies. That's the way that we can navigate this age of conflict and realize the enormous opportunities that await us. Because I believe that if we can transform our conflicts, we can transform our workplaces, we can transform our lives, and we can transform our world. That's my dream. So I want to wish you every success in transforming your conflicts and getting to yes. I will now hand it off to Grace.
Right. Stop sharing. All right, so let's just talk real quickly about some reactions. What are things that stood out for you?
I just like how unique his way of looking at things are and trying to understand conflict in and out kind of stands out. I mean, one thing that always, as conflicts become more personal, we lose that perspective and the ability to find a way out easily and getting help from others. But because, I mean, he's talking about things on a grand scale where there's, people who actually want to get involved. I've had many conflicts where there are just a lot of people who just, they don't like, yeah, they may have an opinion, but they do not want to get involved. So I do like though his outlook on it.
Yeah,
I think a lot of the polarization that we see today, it feels that way in terms of we just are not going to change our opinion. But I don't know if it's about changing your opinion as much as it is learning the story of the other and being willing to sit in that discomfort of, I may not agree, but I can at least understand. Yeah, Jeff.
Yeah, I liked when he was talking about the victory speech and writing the victory speech. That was a really interesting perspective of it, because if you're going into that type of conversation and you can, like, if you don't already know what they may be wanting or maybe kind of thinking about from their perspective, then maybe, you're kind of having to think about how can I learn about the things that they're wanting. But a lot of the video and the book kind of reminded me of the book from last year. I think when I took your class from Guzman, Monica Guzman, then I never thought about it that way. So I was kind of surprised you didn't use that book this semester. But
Yeah, Jeff, my reason for not choosing that book is I knew that there might be people that have already had that class. So yeah. So, and I also want to keep learning. So, but yeah, it is the leaning in with curiosity was all over. I usually teach the listening and civil dialogue class, which some of you may take as part of this program. I'm not teaching it this fall because I'm teaching this class, but that embracing curiosity is so important when we're trying to, build a bridge with other people. Yeah, certainly. Okay, anybody else? Latara, Kat, or Lindsay? Thoughts, reactions?
I liked how Yuri suggested the three key strategies, what he calls superpowers, and just overall breaking down. I'm so sorry.
That's all right. Yeah, and we're going to spend, I mean, in your handout, there is the picture of this balcony, bridge, and third side. And basically, he's got chapters on each one of these. So we're going to be spending a good portion of the semester actually breaking these down so that you can take a look at what these concepts are. And I expect that some of you, this may be the major thing you take away from the class, is these three concepts. And because they can be really practical, both at the interpersonal level and at more of a community or organizational level, as well as a national, international level. So you can take a look at that. Any thoughts, Kat or Lindsay, do you want to add?
I don't have
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say, I just kind of like how he touched out that it's human nature. Like, don't be afraid or don't run away from it as he gets into this thing. And don't hate yourself or get, that you're getting into a conflict. I like the fact that he touched on the fact in the beginning that it's not something you can control, it's something you have to embrace.
Yeah, and leaning into it, embracing it. We don't want to do that sometimes because it seems hard. So, Lindsay.
I was gonna say I don't have any like life-changing takeaways, but I really appreciate the visual that he painted about like literally walking up on the balcony and peering over and constructing the bridge, not just having a pre-made bridge that you put in, but putting in the work to create the bridge and so forth.
We're going to talk a little bit more about that victory speech and how you go about doing that throughout the semester, but I'm going to provide a couple of guidelines that from his website that he provides, or some sources that you can help, or guides, I guess they're called, that you can use next week when we talk about this. So when you're looking at your readings this week, one of the things that sometimes it's difficult to do is to actually make a connection between two books. When we've got it, Jeff, who had me for listening to Civil Dialogue last fall, it's difficult sometimes to have, we've got this many books or this many readings to make connections. And so I actually attempted to do that and identify possible shifts in thinking when combining perspectives. And so I took the 5 parts of the definition from the Berry and Hawker, this is on your handout, and then compared them to where I think they fit in terms of the perspective. This perceived scarce resources was more of a kind of impossible to possible mindset, but the rest of them seem like that they fit with some of Yuri's concepts. So you can take a look at that and keep this maybe in front of you as you're doing your reading this week, so that you can see, okay, here's the connections between the things that I'm reading about. All right, well, we're going to wrap up because it's almost 8 o'clock, and I just want to remind you of what you're going to be doing. And I would like for you to read for this week. It's kind of hard at the beginning of the week to require this, but at the beginning of the semester, but read the readings for both weeks 1 and 2 for next Thursday. So, and remember, for the interpersonal conflict book that's more dense, you don't have to read it thoroughly, okay? You can find portions of it that seem to speak to you more. The possible book, I think you'll just, it'll be naturally something that you fall into, easier for you to read. And I don't mean that I don't trust you guys in terms of the ability to read. I'm just saying that when I was reading this, I was like, there is everything in the kitchen sink in this chapter. And so if you're feeling like that, then pick out the parts that you think would be helpful for that interpersonal conflict book. And then bring one quote from each book's reading to week 2, be ready to share what it meant to you. Okay. Then remember, Sunday, the discussion post for week 1 is due at 11:59, and then you're going to respond back to 3 of your classmates' videos, but you're going to write your response back by Wednesday of next week, so before class starts next Thursday. And then if you didn't attend class, this is for the online people, there's a journal post for you to write so that you can also be answering the questions that I asked at the beginning, but also kind of just letting me know a little bit about how class is going for you. And then start thinking about what context for the work-based plan that you want to be focused in on for the semester as you're trying to build some skills or set some SMART goals for yourself in getting better at conflict in a particular setting. So, questions? All right, so sometimes I end meetings with a checkout, so I'm going to end the class with a checkout. And this is, how are you feeling about the class at this point? And it could be a little overwhelmed, it could be scared, it could be excited, it could be me, what are you thinking and feeling about the class at this point? So I'll start. I'm a little nervous. This is the first time that I've taught this class in a while, so I don't know for sure if everything that I've picked out is going to work well, so we may have to do some adaptation with assignments, but I'm excited about learning alongside of you. Somebody else.
But a little, yeah, I guess a little nervous. I've always been in brick and mortar kind of student. I mean, Zoom is something that's more or less new to me. I really feel and feed off of energy when I'm around people and kind of pick up on cues, nonverbal and things like that in order to go in towards things. So this is just a new experience for me. But so far, I'm enjoying it.
There'll be times in which I'll put you into breakout rooms where you'll actually get to have more of a conversation with each other. So hopefully you'll find this to be useful. But yeah, it's hard to get used to if you're used to being in face-to-face classes, and it feels different. So somebody else, how you feeling about class so far?
I'll go next. I would just say I'm curious, just to see how the rest of the semester goes. This is it just seemed like a very small class. Um, Lindsay, I just want to say thank you, girl, for the compliment. This show enough is a new. I cut all my hair off. It's called the Big Chop. So, anyway, I'm trying to start my lock journey. If any of you know what locks are. So, but it's gonna take some time. You probably won't see me with them. But as far as the class, I would just say curious and also anxious just to kind of see how everything goes. So
Yeah, just so you know, in terms of the number of students that are not here tonight, we have, it looks like 12 students total. And so we have 4 here, 5 here. So there are 7 people that you have not yet met. So it may feel a little bit different than what you're used than what you feel now. And you'll see that, and that's one of the reasons why I want to do videos for the first 3 discussion posts, is so that you can kind of get a feel a little bit of that person. So yeah. So somebody else.
I'm feeling anxious. I'm feeling excited about the class. I found out a week ago that I'm pregnant. So my brain is not fully here. I'm hoping at some point I'll be able to really lock in and not be scatterbrained. But I dropped all my classes except for this one because I just really love your teaching style. So I feel like that's gonna go a long way.
Congratulations, Lindsay. And I know that your master's
congratulations, Lindsay. I'm
project
so
topic is
glad.
also kind of related to this. So yeah. How far along are you?
Oh, barely. I'm 5 weeks.
Okay.
So we're still in the danger zone, but
Okay. So prayers, if you believe in prayers towards Lindsay and that baby for healthy growth. Okay. All right. Kat or Jeff?
I would say I'm definitely intrigued to pick up some new information and add more tools to the tool belt from this semester. Seems like Uri's book is going to go into quite a bit more detail for each of those. So I'm intrigued, that's for sure.
Okay, good. Curious and wanting to learn. All right, Kat, how about you?
I think excited and curious. Excited that I think this class is going to give me something to take away from and have in my tool belt, but definitely curious because I've done online school like a decade ago when it started. So I'm curious to see how the Zoom concept will pan out. It'll be fine. I'm excited about it so far, but it's definitely different from 10 years ago when online learning was starting to come out.
Absolutely. And so you and Tony can have individual conversations about how this is different and liking or not liking. And I would encourage you, as all of you who are here, to, if there are things that I can do, and I know tonight was more information giving, but if there are things that I can do that make this class to be more useful for you, whether it be adapting assignments or the way I structure a particular class period, please let me know. Just reach out and let me know that, because I want to learn to be the best that I can be for you all. So, all right. Well, take care, and we will look forward to seeing your discussion post by the end of the weekend. See ya. Did you have a question, Tony? Or are you good? I think he's good.